Thank you.
Okay. Can I just remind everybody to put their mute on? Good morning, and thank you for joining this live Community and Neighbourhood Scrutiny Board, which is taking place in line with the revised regulations. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded. I'm Jenny Holmes, Scrutiny Coordinator. Present at the meeting are the following members. In the chair, Councillor Linda Bigham, Councillor Faye Abbott, Councillor Mayor Ali, Councillor Roger Bailey, Councillor Matty Heaven, Councillor John McNicholas, Councillor John Mutton, Councillor Robert Thay, Councillor Seamus Walsh. Cabinet members present are Councillor Pervez Akhtar, who's the Deputy Cabinet Member for Policing and Inequalities, also Councillor Lloyd, Deputy Cabinet Member for City Services, and Councillor Welsh, Cabinet Member for Housing and Communities. Councillor Heatherton, who is the Cabinet Member for City Services, will be joining us later. Supporting the meeting is Vicky Castry, Scrutiny Coordinator. Officers will introduce themselves before they speak. Thank you. May I remind everybody to keep their microphones on mute and their cameras turned off unless you've been invited by the chair to speak. If members of the committee or officers do wish to speak, please do so by using the raise hands function, which we will bring to the chair's attention. I will now hand you over to the chair of the meeting, Councillor Linda Bigham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Good morning, everyone, and good morning to any members of the public joining us today. So if we start off then with item 1, apologies and substitutions. Do we have either, please, Jenny?
We haven't had any apologies or substitutions, thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, are there any...
Sorry, Chair. I give apology for Councillor Abdul Khan. He asked me to deal with any issue.
Thank you very much, Pervez. Thank you. And I understand, Councillor Bailey, that you're having to leave us early.
That's correct, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Item 2, then, any declarations of interest in any matters on the agenda today? No? Thank you. Item 3, then, minutes of the last meeting held on the 4th of February 2021. Thank you, Councillor Welsh. Is everyone in agreement? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And are there any matters arising from those minutes? I'll take that as no. Thank you. Moving on then to item 4, the impact of COVID-19 on the Hot Street Surveillance Project. And do I understand that it is Councillor Akhtar who would speak to this if you wanted to open this item?
That's right, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Akhtar, would you like to open the meeting in any way, or should we move straight to officers?
Thank you, Chair. I will be very brief. Thank you for giving me opportunity. Chair, I'll be very blunt and very clear, and I want to send a message to people who flight it that it is a criminal and disgraceful to flight it, and council is watching them. And as a council, we want to end this menace of flight tipping, and we ask and urge residents to report as soon as possible. Obviously, our city council priorities is and always will be to have clean environment, clean neighborhoods where there is no litter, no flight tipping, no dog falling, and reduced graffiti. But COVID-19 has affected many ways in many areas, and this is one of the areas. And once again, Madam Chairman, is always about funding and more powers. The council needs to tackle this menace. Over to officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if we move to the presentation then, please, officers.
Thank you, Councillor Bigham, and thank you, Councillor Akhtar. Hopefully all members have seen the briefing note which was included in the pack. Just to focus, we identify all fly tipping in the city right down to street level, and the streets which suffer the most fly tipping we call hot streets, and we focus on the top 30 hot streets. Most of the fly tipping that we suffer in the city is household waste. It tends to be local in that it's local people who are fly tipping in their street and locality. We get from these streets, we tend to get very, very few reports. That could be because people are frightened of reporting their neighbours. And it's also fair to say that in these particular streets, there are other types of crimes that take place. That's not unusual. We introduced this particular initiative, this pilot, in recognition that we don't have the patrolling capacity that we had in previous years. So it was to look to use technology to actually help us in that in this particular area. Using camera surveillance is not new to us, but we have tended to use it predominantly for commercial fly tipping on vulnerable sites, and that's been used to great effect. So it was a change of tack to try and use it in residential streets to see if we could have an impact. Unfortunately, COVID then happened, and a number of things which have actually put us behind. I think probably aside from COVID, the issue which took our officers away from this particular project was the Safer Streets Fund, in that the management team and officers who would have been delivering this have been primarily focused on the Safer Streets Fund. This was the £550,000 which we received from the Home Office, and Coventry was the only successful bid in the West Midlands. So there was a lot of focus on that, and that's taken all of our time and effort in delivering that particular project. Home Office should have notified us that we were successful in early April. In effect, we didn't hear until late July, and in fact we didn't get the grant agreement through until November. So it's been a race against time in actually introducing that project. Other matters which have been against us is that there were delays in procuring the cameras because of COVID, and also getting lampposts adapted. During that period of time, we also had officers who were shielding, some who had contracted the virus, and some who were self-isolating because they'd been in contact with people who'd had the virus. And we've had to prioritise our services. One of the services we prioritised was keeping the noise service running 7 days a week up until 3 a.m. most mornings. And we've also had to provide officers for other duties as well. And I'll give you an example. We've had 6 officers trained so that they can support the council control room, the CCTV element, so that we could keep that running. And we've also had officers trained so that they can operate the crematorium as well. So we have been pulled a little bit pillar to post. And one of the recommendations that we're making in this report is that we come back to Scrutiny Board 4 in October, when we've had a clear run at actually delivering this project. We're hopeful that in the next month or so that we can get this up and running, and hopefully be able to see whether this makes a difference. As I say, it is a new venture for us, and it may work, it may not work, but I'd rather be criticised for trying something than trying nothing. That concludes my presentation, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions that people might have.
Thank you very much.
Chair, we've got questions from Councillor John Mutton and Councillor John McNicholas.
Thank you. If we start with Councillor Mutton, then John.
Thank you, Linda. I've got one question and one more of a comment. If I start with the comment, I totally support this idea. Fly tipping is the bane of our lives. We spend a fortune every year having to clean up other people's mess. So I totally support this. But I do have a question. In the report, it says that the streets in question were chosen because we believe that they were best suited for the deployment of this equipment. I would have thought we would have chosen the worst hit streets for fly tipping, not just because certain streets were best for the equipment. I would also like to ask, and I know fly tipping is terrible in Fosel, but 5 of the 6 streets are in Fosel. We have a very similar problem in St Michael's ward. So my question is, couldn't at least one street have been chosen in St Michael's ward? Hopefully the worst street, because we're forever having to go in there and pick up rubbish that people have fly tipped. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Would you like to answer that, or would you prefer that the questions actually come in threes?
No, I prefer to answer each councillor in turn, if that's okay, Councillor Bigham.
Thank you very much.
In relation to Councillor Mutton's questions, the reason we chose the streets, and I said were best suited to this, is largely lines of sight. If a road has bends in it or kinks in it, we obviously lose that line of sight. So this was purely on a technical basis. So that was the reasons why certain streets lend themselves to this and other streets don't. In relation to targeting the worst streets, these are amongst the worst streets. One thing which we have experienced over the past few years is that St Michael's always used to be the worst ward for fly tipping. That sadly has been overtaken by Fosel, but St Michael's is not without cameras. The Safer Streets project has put, and I think Martin Lawler will be able to give more information on this. I believe it's around 16 or 17 cameras into those streets, and that is to target acquisitive crime, but these are also streets that tend to suffer from fly tipping as well. So please be reassured that St Michael's ward is not missing out. Martin Lawler, would you want to comment on how many cameras we have in the Safer Streets Fund positioned in St Michael's ward?
Yes, thank you, Craig. Yeah, in total there'll be 16 by the time it's finished. They'll be up and operational by the first week in April, and they're the deployable types, similar to the ones that are being used in the hot street areas in Foshill.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
Thank you, John. Councillor McNicholas.
Thank you, Chair. I am absolutely delighted that we have political direction on this, because as ward councillors, one of our major problems is fly tipping, and accepting this is a pilot that has had problems because of COVID. Nevertheless, those problems still persist. So I won't criticise Craig for you trying to challenge this problem. However, there is a but, and the tenor of the paper that's in front of us is indicating our aim was not necessarily to identify offenders, but to deter people from this activity, and so on. I mean, Craig, you will be aware of my view that those residents talking with me as a ward councillor are saying we have to have enforcement associated with these activities. So I'll use as an example the appendix, where we've got signage which really says, okay, we're watching you, and we're looking out for our community, but we're not giving any indication that we are prepared to enforce strongly. And I think that's absolutely essential if we are going to be successful in this pilot. Hearing what you're saying about St. Michael's and those identified hot streets or hotspots, we all have hotspots in our areas that need to be dealt with. And you're with this pilot dealing with the first 30 streets or so. I want to see this pilot expanded as soon as possible, and I want to be assured that enforcement is as strong as possible. So I think that's my contribution, Chair, this emphasis on enforcement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Craig, would you like to take that?
Yes, certainly. John, yeah, I'm fully in support, and enforcement is one arm of this. What we're trying to do is to engineer behavior change. We're trying to make people think twice before they do what they do. If people change their behavior, then enforcement isn't needed. If they don't change their behavior, then we will enforce. Obviously, we need the evidence, and hopefully, if they do fly tip, we'll be able to pick it up on camera and take that forward. But yes, enforcement remains a key part to this. As for expanding the project, this isn't cheap. The cameras are not inexpensive, and they were largely funded from receipts of money for issuing fixed penalty notices for littering. So it is a bit of a virtuous circle in that offenders paying their fines are paying for these types of cameras. But the cameras cost individually in the region of £8,500 each. So they're not cheap. Well, for that price, we have 5 years worth of data and 5 years worth of maintenance on those particular cameras. So yes, we would like to roll it out, but I'd want to be assured that the pilot actually works before we look to spend more valuable public money on an initiative like this. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Craig. John, are you happy with that?
Well, if I may come back, Chair.
Yes.
I think I really want to emphasise that at a local level, this is a very high priority for local communities. And yes, understanding that there is a spend, we as a council should do all that we can to challenge this. And I'm really not being critical. I want to support this as much as possible. So, for example, I mean, the realization that these cameras are permanently fixed, has any thought been given to having access to cameras that are more mobile, put it in those terms, that can be utilized in the hotspot areas of other wards? And actually, can I have an understanding of the enforcement process? Because yes, of course, enforcement is there, but the point I'm making is that the paper is referring not necessarily to identify offenders, but deter from this activity. Now, that says to me that is not as strong as it should be. And I think we really should be making it absolutely clear. And that's why I refer to the signage, that the council will prosecute don't tip and don't fly tip. And I think we've really got to be strong to remind local communities who you've identified in the paper that it's local people effectively fouling their own nest that need to be challenged. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Craig, so regarding the processes.
Yes, I can come back on that, Councillor Bigham.
Thank you.
First of all, these cameras are deployable. They are mobile. They are not fixed. Providing lampposts are adapted, we can move these particular cameras to other parts of the city. So the aim is certainly for a period of time while we're focusing on these streets is to keep these cameras in the streets, but they can be deployed elsewhere in the city. We we have in our armoury a further 8 cameras. They are deployed to other hotspots in the city. They tend to be areas where we have traditionally suffered commercial fly tipping. So this is to concentrate using surveillance equipment on residential streets, but please be assured that they are mobile and they can be moved, so that they're not fixed. As far as enforcement is concerned, I'm going to hand over to Martin McHugh, and he will talk through the process that we follow in actually taking enforcement action. It is an important part of what we do, but it is not the only part. I mentioned about deterring and behaviour change. I'll give you an example. There was a borough in London who were targeting acquisitive crime, and they were using smart DNA water to put on various valuable items in people's homes. So if these items were stolen, they could be tracked elsewhere. And this particular project was run across a number of boroughs in London, but the boroughs that had the biggest reductions in acquisitive crime were the people who actively publicised it, put signs up in streets, so people were aware that surveillance was being used. They were more successful in reducing acquisitive crime. It's called nudge theory, and it's something that we want to actually use on this particular project to see what the effects are. But please be assured that enforcement will be following very closely behind that, and if we have evidence, we will use it. Now I'm going to hand over to Martin McHugh now. He'll be able to talk through the enforcement process in more detail.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, regards to the enforcement process that we follow, particularly if I can sort of specify really in the hot street areas to start with, we've looked at the sort of the top 30, as Craig says, and we assign each of these streets to a couple of our officers. So we have neighbourhood enforcement officers, who are the ones who go and do the sort of daily patrols. They'll walk about, they will issue fixed penalties, they will speak to residents, they will try and get a feel for the street to find out what the issues are on those streets. And I'm sure most members will have spoken to a NEO or will have had some dealings with NEOs in years gone by, that they're very effective in what they do and going out and getting a feel for the street. They will usually look through any bags, any evidence on the street. They will then look to report that through to the street enforcement team. I know many of the councillors here have spoken to our team recently regarding issues such as this. Those officers and the street enforcement officers will look to sort of pursue this to see what sort of lines of inquiry we can get from that. So whatever evidence we've got, either within the waste or within any footage caught on the cameras, we will then look to take formal action against those who are responsible for it. That's the general sort of enforcement process for this, particularly within the top 30 streets. We will do weekly patrols, sometimes more than that, depending on how severe the street is fly tipped or littered. To go back to, I think it was Councillor Mutton's inquiry about the worst streets. The streets we've chosen for this project were actually 6 of the worst streets that are in the city. The only 2 that surpassed those 6 streets were actually Foleshill Road and Stony Stanton Road. And I think, as Craig said, it would be impossible to put a couple of cameras on Stony Stanton Road or Foleshill Road and make any kind of impact, because obviously they're so long. The streets we chose were the ones that were fairly long. If you look at, say, Cross Road, for instance, it's quite a long road, but by pinpointing and working with colleagues in the street pride officers who do the waste pickups, they basically notified us where the sort of the worst areas were that were being fly tipped. So we put the cameras around those areas. As part of the process for this project, we letter dropped basically the whole area. So the streets that were the 6 streets, but also neighbouring streets around them. So we did like Holmesdale, Eld Road, Webster Street, streets around where we have the majority of the fly tipping. And so every resident was written to notify them that this was a project that was taking place, and also that what action we could take. So it did outline how to report fly tipping, what the penalties would be if people were found to be fly tipping, and trying to encourage people to actually become more involved. That's sort of an overview, I think. Basically, is there anything I've missed, you think, Craig, on that one that you'd rather I mentioned?
That basically covers that.
That covers most of it. Obviously, We do a lot of this work ourselves by visiting it, but we also rely on members of the public to come forward and let us know. So we have been trying, particularly in these streets, to get what we call street champions. So when we've got someone on the street who is really interested and really cares about the area, we've asked them to come to us and they can report these issues through to my team directly, so we can get the evidence as soon as it's happened. We can check the footage as soon as it's happened. So we're not waiting and things aren't being lost in the pipeline, which often happens, unfortunately.
Thank you very much, Martin. I think I'm seeing Councillor Mutton. Was it in reference to your previous question, John? I think you're on mute.
I am.
Thank you.
It is, please, Linda. I've listened with interest because I do support this scheme. And Martin just said about Crossroad. Well, I know Crossroad very well, and it's got a big right angle bend in the middle of the road. I don't believe cameras can see round corners. So I'm just wondering how the cameras can work when there's that right angle bend in the middle of the road.
Particularly with the one on Crossroad, with regards to the sort of the document that was sent out, Crossroad actually has 3 on it. So we have one at either end really, and one in the middle, right next to the junction, opposite where the industrial units are. So it gives a feel for the whole area. It would be impossible to cover the whole of Crossroad because, as I say, it is a particularly long road. But we felt it was too good an opportunity to miss because it was one of the worst. I think it was like the 3rd worst affected street in the zone. So it was one that we felt we had to do. But also, if you look at the sort of the geography of the ones that we've chosen, there is a bit of overlap between some of those streets. So Holmesdale, Eld Road, Broad Street, they're all within a fairly sort of defined area. So hopefully by blanketing all of the residents who live there to say, look, this is what's happening, please report it to us. And also then, you know, the waste crews who cover that area know the cameras are there, so they know to let me know so we can get the footage looked at as and when. So that's why that one was chosen. I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Yeah, it does. That makes sense now. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you, John. Jenny, was Councillor Heaven next?
I think Councillor Heaven had a hand up, yes. And then it's Councillor Ali and then Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Councillor Heaven.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, just want to understand more, and I really do support this scheme. I think it's something that is beneficial for whole of Coventry. Is the surveillance camera specifically only used for fly tipping? Is that what is employed? So just for that purpose, so you can't use it for any criminal activity, or is it just for viewing fly tipping?
Thank you, Councillor Heaven. Craig, would you like to take that one?
Absolutely. Can I reassure Councillor Heaven that it's for all types of crime? We have a data sharing protocol with West Midlands Police. So we share data from these cameras and they share data from their cameras with us too. So yes, it's not a surprise that in streets that suffer high levels of fly tipping, they also suffer from other types of crime as well. The two unfortunately tend to go together. So there is a community benefit from putting cameras in these particular streets because it will hopefully deter and catch other criminals.
Thank you, Craig. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yeah, Chair, I have just the reason I had to ask this so that I can ask my following question to understand the use of whether it was just purely for fly tipping or more. The reason why I asked, because I'm looking at Appendix 1 and it says warning high definition camera. I wonder, on safer street area, it doesn't really mention anything about fly tipping in that. I know I appreciated you've mentioned using different ways by sending letters to residents. I wonder whether that could be including what you already have, but to have some kind of more of a clear signage. Are we seeing you are doing fly tipping in this area, and work on another image that will demonstrate as you are being watched by fly tipping? That's my question.
Thank you. Craig?
What I can say is we use these signs to basically deter crime of all sorts. Rather than have specific signs for each particular type of crime, for example, the police tend to use the cameras a lot for antisocial behaviour and acquisitive crime. That's burglaries, theft from the person, etc. So that we can make sure we contain costs. We use similar signage across the city. As far as the streets are concerned, we will also be putting flyers through the door, which are specifically relating to fly tipping. As I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of fly tipping in any street will be from people who live in that street or in that immediate locality. Fly tippers don't tend to travel. They tend to fly tip in their area. So please be assured that there will be specific leaflets going through their doors.
Thank you very much, Craig. Does that answer your question,
Yeah,
Councillor Heaven?
I just feel that looking at it, and I appreciate because it covers all type of crimes, but for the purpose of this report that we're reading, and we're trying to prevent, and I can see by sending letters, but that could be seen by one member of household and ignored by other. That's a very possibility. It happens with letters if it's generic. I still think that we should look into having other signs within the area of encouraging people not to do fly tipping, so that they know that the cameras are not there just for other crimes, but there for fly tipping. But my next question is that these 30 hotspot streets that you indicated, was that pre-COVID?
Thank you, Craig.
I'll ask Martin to pick up on that particular thing because he is my hot street supremo.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Craig, Councillor Heaven. Yeah, the data set we use, we look at it on a month-by-month basis. But when we were setting up the trial for these particular streets, those top 6 that we chose were basically within the top 10. They were the ones that were the sort of short enough to be worthwhile doing, but certainly in the top 10. Post-COVID, or so we say post-COVID, during COVID, shall we say, we did have a sort of a rise, across the city really, but those streets were still and are still some of the worst ones. Some of the worst ones, shall we say, or they're still being affected to such an extent that it's worth keeping the cameras there. I think, certainly for the trial, just to see if it has made any impact, because we are seeing rises across the city, unfortunately.
Thank you, Martin. Does that answer your question, Councillor Heaven?
It does, Chair, and just following that, so basically what we're seeing is that these were the 30 hotspots, and from what you explained, Martin, is that we've seen an increase on these 30 hotspots due to COVID and increase in other areas in the city too.
Yeah, I think that's the take-home message. I think basically there has been an increase across the city generally. It's how much of an increase there has been in these sort of the 6 hotspots, the 6 hot streets that we've chosen with the cameras. We'll be able to look at that once we've sort of analysed the data over the next few months. So hopefully by October we should have some kind of understanding as to how much of an impact these cameras have had. Certainly the 30 streets that we cover that the NEOs do the patrols on, and then once the NEOs have been out and have had a look. So I lost my train of thought then when I saw the message come on. I'll put my camera on. When we sorry about that. When we go and visit the streets, what was could you remind the question again? Sorry,
so it's the fact that the numbers are increasing. So you've had 30 hotspots, but that 30, because of COVID, the number of fly tipping increases. On top of that, we got more areas being affected.
Yeah, I think certainly with COVID, I allocate all the work to the team, and I've seen streets that have been fly tips on that I've never seen before in the 18 years I've worked here. So there certainly has been, an increase in fly tipping, and in places that you wouldn't necessarily have had before for whatever reason. So that certainly has been an issue across the city. With regards to the hotspot areas, sometimes you can get an inflated number of issues because we've got so much officer patrols going around those areas. So as the NEOs are going up and down and seeing it, and as my street enforcement officers are going out, they will report it. These are often areas which historically were underreported, perhaps because the people who lived on the street didn't report it. In days when we had the warden service, they were being reported more and more so. you know, things have dropped off, but by having my officers going out, we do see things as it happens, so we get a true reflection as to the state of the issues in the area, so we know, you know, how much it's costing the council space to pick it up, so we can target those areas more appropriately. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Just to wrap this, just because I need to understand why I asked the question, and appreciate, Martin, your feedback. So one of the feedback I've had that may help you, because obviously we've seen an increase, and because of COVID initial stages, the London Road Refusal Waste Centre had to, because of social distancing, change their way, and it's all gone online to book. I think that we need to investigate whether it has had an impact on some as a way of stopping them from actually going and dropping off, because I've heard people saying, well, it's just, I can't be bothered. You know, I've got to go online and list the items that I'm going to put. And some people probably may not be literate enough to do that, to go online. They may have the facility. So it's another way. Maybe this could be reviewed. I know it's been a good method in terms of the recycling review centre. It's been working fantastic for them. They've been monitoring things, and because of social distancing, they have done that. But moving forward, I would really welcome to look into it, because I've had feedback of people who just not bother going there, and probably it's easier for them to do more fly tipping than actually booking it and itemizing the items. And they just said they just don't know how to book it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I don't think there was a question in there, Councillor Heaven. Just, was it a point to be noted?
It's a point
as to what's happened?
Noted. Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether the officers have noted this. As I said, there's a two sides of it. It's effective and it's working well for the Recycling Review Centre. But I just wonder, we need to analyse it, get more feedback, whether that since COVID we've had an increased number of fly tipping, and if this continues, just to monitor it and to find out other ways of making it more effective and easy for residents to get rid of their waste hold.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Bigham, if I could make some comments around that.
Yes, please.
The last 12 months have been incredibly difficult, and it wasn't just you raised the issue of the tip and the appointment system. At the very beginning of lockdown, and certainly in the early months, the tip was actually shut. Waste collections ceased. The vast majority of the population were at home, deciding to spring clean their houses and gardens. It was just unprecedented times. Enforcement during that period was incredibly difficult because our officers didn't have PPE. So actually carrying out our routine job was very, very difficult. Circumstances which in my 30 years I'd never come across before, and hopefully never will again. So to say it was just one element is really, really difficult. We had effectively a tsunami of different issues which all materialized at the same time. And it is going to take us quite a bit of time to get back on top of fly tipping. If I talk about 2019, we actually had reductions of fly tipping in 2019 because of the work that was done by ourselves and Graham Hood's team as well, and Sarah Elliott's with waste collection. But COVID just effectively blew all that apart, and we're having to start again and pick up those pieces. And this initiative is just part of that. So to blame it on one thing, I think would be wrong, because the picture is really, really complex. I hope that explains the landscape and situations in which we found ourselves.
Thank you very much, Craig.
Chair, if I may, I can't listen to this debate any longer, because COVID hasn't fly tipped a single thing. It's the dirty people that get rid of their rubbish by dumping it in the streets. They're to blame, not COVID, and I'm not decrying how difficult it's been for the officers, but it's the people to blame, and that's why the comments that have been made about enforcement are so critically correct. You know, the only way we do this, and we've publicised it before, and it's been effective. You know, we have got to do everything in our power to catch the culprits, whether through cameras, whether through examining the rubbish, and that's not a pleasant job, I accept. But let's get hold of the people that's done it, get them up in court, get them fined, and get it publicised. I believe that's the only way to get on top of this. And I'm sorry for butting in like that, Chair, but I feel so strongly about it. My car today, I've already filled it up with rubbish. I've got an appointment to the waste reduction unit for this afternoon. You know, if I can do it with my lack of IT skills, then anyone can do it. And if they've got vehicles, which I've seen people taking stuff out of vehicles and dumping, and I've reported them, there is no excuse for them not to take it to the tip instead of dumping it in the woods and the fields. Sorry, Chair.
No, thank you very much, John. So I think your question's been responded to, Councillor Heaven. So now we move on to Councillor Ali, who has a question.
Sorry, just because I needed to finish up so that there's no misunderstanding. As what Craig said, there's not one issue, there's a number of different issues. My point was maybe in the future, obviously we can't compare the situation that things been happening in the last 12 months, and I totally agree with Councillor Mutton and it's about how we use different approaches, but I really highly recommend for future just to monitor whether that system of booking system is deterring some people to go and use it, and maybe look into having a 1 day a week that it could be easier for them. If that's an excuse or not, I don't know, but I think it's something to just look into.
Well, I think that as the pilot draws to a close, those sort of questions will arise in it. Am I right, Craig, that this is a pilot and we'll be looking at the results of the pilot?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Craig. So then moving on, I think that's answered your question. Sorry?
Councillor Bigham, can I just state that if people haven't got the ability to go online or the facility, is that they can just phone up. They are not, we have made sure that people who don't have that facility can actually just phone up and make an appointment. So nobody should actually be deterred from doing anything. And we have made sure that that message has gone out. And in terms of the extra tonnage, it's been huge. The meetings I've had is just, looking at what we are doing these days, it is huge. And we're quite happy to share that with the board, the Scrutiny board anytime, because I think it's really important to say what is going on here. But it's really worked very well. And as I say, it isn't about doing everything online. We have to ensure that nobody is disadvantaged in any way. So it's just for clarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heatherton. Councillor Ali, you had a question.
Yes, I agree with John Mutton. COVID should not be a reason for this. They shouldn't use COVID as an excuse, because recently when we, as my family, tried to get rid of the old furnitures, we quite happily got the appointment at the fly tipping. I mean, I don't think that should be used as an excuse. Yes, you have to book an appointment, but that doesn't mean that a slight delay, but you just have to be patient like everybody else. And again, I agree with Pat, that it is easy, as Councillor Pat Heatherton said, it's easy, you just book the appointments. So that was my follow-up comment.
That was your comment.
So my question, I have a few here. I've had a look at the reports, and it is a very excellent project. I'm totally in agreement with this, because recently we've had a constituents who had bought a property, a fairly new one, and there was lots of. I'm not sure I understand. sorry, that was my watch. I didn't. They had lots of fly tipping in their back garden, and they had a drain blockage. So we had to call somebody called Cleanup Project. One of my PA arranged it, and they were very good. And I've had a look at this, and I suppose the Cleanup Project is quite good to deploy some of the fly tipping. But in 4.4 of the report, you say there was a slight delay in installing further cameras. Has that delay been now concluded? I mean, have you managed to? Is that still in force? I mean, is there still a delay on that 4.4? And also 4.3, you have a list. There's a 6 streets on there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Are there any other streets that's going to be on that list? And are there any, and the 30 cameras, the hot street cameras, have you got any Radford ward, cameras in Radford ward? As recently we've had, again, I mentioned the cleanup project earlier on. They were cleaned up the Radford ward. So I don't see any Radford ward roads here. And that's it, I think.
Thank you very much. Craig, would you like to take those?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, one more question, sorry, just to add on. Okay. Are there any risk of these cameras being damaged, vandalized? Are they high up, or are they within the reach? I just wanted, that was just out of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Yeah, good questions. The cameras are actually now up on the lampposts. What we haven't been able to do is to have dedicated officers to actually push this project forward, and I'm hopeful that in the next month we'll be able to get that particular moving. But we have the cameras now. The lampposts have been adapted and they're actually up. The 6 streets in question, we had to start somewhere, and so we've recorded data for those 6 streets going back a number of years, so that when we start the project in earnest, we'll be able to see what effect it's actually had. So we'll be comparing it with a period before that, and that will obviously have the COVID year in as well, but it's also got the years as a benchmark before that. I'm going to answer the question about, do these cameras get damaged? In the past, we have had cameras damaged. It is relatively rare, but we have to use a certain type of lamppost. And so these cameras are mounted at a height which it is very, very difficult to interfere with them. You'd have to climb some distance. What I'll do is I'll ask Martin to talk about the height of the lampposts that we use, and I'll also ask him to talk about Radford, because Martin lives in Radford, so he'll be able to talk quite knowledgeably about that. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, the cameras themselves can only go on lamp columns due to the weight of the camera. They're about 4.5, 5 kilos. So because of the PFI bid that we've got, Balfour Beatty will only let us put cameras of a certain size on there, and they can only go on certain columns that are especially strengthened. So they have to be 8 meters. I think there's an 8-meter malachite column, I think they're called. And they need to be at least 7 meters off the ground, basically. If you can imagine, in the past, when we've had our old suite of cameras that we used to deploy in certain parts of the city, I've had them damaged by people shinning up smaller lampposts, particularly the old sort of the smaller ones that were like 4 or 5 meters high, or the concrete ones. Any cameras on those were often prone to being damaged, and the police have lost quite a number of cameras in years gone by, I understand, because of that, depending on the areas in which you put them as well, because obviously people don't often like being monitored. The ones that we've chosen are 8 meters high. They're very big, substantial columns. So they're sort of on the junctions of main roads. They are very visible. They are very overt. People will see them. It's not like people are being, covertly monitored. These are overt cameras on very tall columns, and they give a good line of sight. You can see for, up to 200 meters in any direction, basically. So that answers that one. With regards to Radford, I mean, obviously, as Craig says, we've got to start somewhere. So with the cameras that we've got, when we put on these six streets, they do cover quite a wide geographical area, not just the 6 streets. They will look at other streets that adjoin them, because some are on the corner of Stony Stanton Road on the corner of Broad Street. So you can see Cross Road on the corner of Foleshill Road. So you can see where they are. They do cover quite a wide area. They were chosen; those sites were chosen both for the sort of the amount of fly tipping that occurs in those areas, but also to get sort of the best value for the money for it for the whole sort of widespread area. As I said, we've only got those cameras within those areas. We do have another suite of 8 older cameras, as Craig referred to. That they are older cameras. They're not as good as the new ones, but we have deployed those in some of our areas where we've had some of it sort of commercial, or it's in sort of a more sort of semi-rural location. So we've had sort of Northbrook Road, places like that, Bedlam Lane, Brighton Street. So they have been scattered throughout the city, not just within the Foleshill ward. Relating to Radford itself, we have had a number of issues on Owenford Road, Jubilee Crescent. So we have had one of the older cameras put up on Jubilee Crescent, which it gives footage, but it's not good footage. And because it's local residents, shadowy figures turning up, dumping stuff and shuffling off into the distance, they don't often give the best visual view of who's done it. You can get a rough idea of where they've come from when we've looked through the bags and found out, we found evidence amongst it. We have had quite a lot of success at that particular spot with finding just evidence within the waste on the site. It would be nice to get a lovely facial recognition of it or a vehicle. So what we're looking to do is put a newer style camera that we've got further down the road to give a better overview of the area on Owenford Road, Jubilee Crescent. So I know some of the councillors have spoken to me about this in the past. So we have sort of improved the surveillance around there, and that camera's going up in the next week. So we should get a better picture, a better overview for the whole area. I know some of the other areas of Radford, it generally tends to be in sort of the rear entries. We have it on Jubilee Crescent, but the rest of it just seems to be the rear entries behind certain properties, and it's difficult to find a camera. You'd have to have a new camera installed at the junction of a rear entry. So if you had ones on Biller Road or places like that, you'd have to put a specific bespoke camera in at the site in order to monitor it. And the camera, to put a column in, you're looking at effectively about £2,000 to have a new column installed, which you could then attach a camera to. So it does become quite onerous, and it is quite expensive to carry this kind of work out. So you need to make sure it's not just a one-off, but it is like a regular, perennial problem that we're having.
What I'd like to say in addition to what Martin's just said is that we place our cameras in locations where they are most needed. It is data driven, so I can understand that most elected members would want cameras in their wards, and I fully understand that. But the criteria is, 1, would it make a difference? And 2, is the fly tipping as such that we should prioritise that particular street for the use of a camera? So we make it as objective as we possibly can.
Thank you very much, Craig, and thank you, Martin. Now, I'm very aware that both Councillor Heatherton, who's presenting, and Councillor Bailey have to leave us early. Is this a point of information, Councillor Heatherton, that your hand's up for, or is it a historical hand?
It's a historical hand. Sorry, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if I bring in Councillor Bailey then at this point.
Thank you, Chair. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you. It's been very interesting, and I know it's going on a bit, but this is a really interesting subject for many of us for a lot of good reasons. I'm just curious. I understand they can access the data remotely. I make the assumption it's either from Whitley Depot or from Frygate, where we have a lot of remotes working. I also wondered how many cameras we've got in total. These streets that we're installing them on, I think there's 12 cameras, and I got the impression that we have a small number of other cameras. So I was just wondering how many we had, and I think someone said they cost £8,000 each. I'm sure I picked that up. I also wondered about which were the 30 hot streets. I think most of us have wards where we got a hot street. I've got Leaf Lane, for instance, but I'm just curious to know what those 30 hot streets were, if we're allowed to know that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Roger. Craig, would you like to take that?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Councillor Bigham. And Councillor Bailey, we currently have 20 cameras in total. As I say, 12 dedicated to this particular pilot. but we have 8 cameras which we routinely use and move around the city. As far as access to these, yes, they can be accessed remotely, but we strictly control that. Data access is actually via the council's control room. We are mindful that this is sensitive data, and so we have protocols in place to control access to that data. The cost is around about £8,000 per camera. That includes 5 years worth of maintenance and 5 years worth of data. The hot streets in question, and this is a really difficult one because the hot streets do change. Some of them are what we call core hot streets. We have perennial problems in, and I guess the danger of is actually publicising where these hot streets are, is that it can stigmatise these areas.
It was me. It was this. Okay. No.
Do you want to mute yourself, Councillor Heatherton, and then we perhaps won't pick up. Thank you. Thank you. Carry on, Craig.
We can supply a list of these, the current 30 hot streets to elected members. I'd be loath to actually talk about them in a public setting because it does stigmatise these areas, and it's not the fault of the vast majority of people who live in those streets. It is a minority of people who cause this problem. But yes, we can give those details to elected members, but I would prefer to do that offline.
Yes.
Hopefully that's covered all of your questions, Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wondered if you're looking to buy more as money allows. I know it's tight and it may not be easy, but I just was curious. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roger. Jenny, I don't think I see any more hands on this item.
We've got Councillor Thay's got his hand up, and I'm not sure if Councillor Akhtar just wants to have some final words.
So Councillor Thay.
Hiya, I've got one comment and one question. So
the
comment is, I'm all in favour of this. It's a really good idea. I mean, obviously it'd be better if it could spread to other streets, but if that's all we've got, then fine. And also, there is no excuse for fly tipping. People are responsible for their rubbish if it goes in the wheelie bin or if they take it to the tip. If they give it to a third party, it's still their responsibility to make sure it gets to the tip. It's really easy to book at the tip. I've been 5 times in the last year. I've got a couple more trips to make. It takes me 5 minutes to do it online. And if you can phone up and do it, great. So I don't really see an excuse for people saying, well, I can't be bothered. That's not an excuse. That's just laziness. My question is, are you speaking to the housing associations like Citizen? Because I've had issues in my ward where it's Citizen areas which are not covered by the council, which are getting fly tipped in, and getting Citizen to come out and clean up this mess it can take weeks and weeks. So I'll generally come through to you guys. But do you have any sway with Citizen? Because to be honest, their performance, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely not good enough in disposing of fly tip waste.
Thank you. Craig, would you like to answer that one?
Yes, I will, Linda.
Thank
you, Robert. You're quite right. There are no excuses to this, and the vast majority of Coventry citizens do not fly tip. It is a minority of people. We rely heavily on people reporting what they see, and the quicker they report it, the quicker we can take action while the evidence is still there. But you're right. It is just laziness. I too have used the tip on 3 occasions, and I've found it to be excellent, the booking system. As far as Citizen is concerned, yes, they are responsible for their land. It is not the responsibility of the council. Their responses can be mixed, I think it's fair to say. Sometimes they respond quite quickly. Other times it can be a little bit more slowly. I can't really comment on the operation that Citizen used to remove their rubbish. But what I can say is when we speak to them, they tend to move it pretty quickly, and we can take action against Citizen. We wouldn't want to, but a quiet word usually does the job. And I know Martin has lots of conversations with his counterparts at Citizen, and by and large, we find them responsive. But I'm not saying, Councillor Thay, that you've not had experiences which have proved frustrating. But as I say, if you've reported things through and you haven't had a response from Citizen, then we will follow that up.
Thank you very much.
Can I just follow up and say, yeah, you're correct, Craig, because every time I can't get a response from them, as soon as I contact you guys, it's gone within 2 days.
There was a compliment in there, Craig. Thank you very much, Councillor Thay. Councillor Heatherton, do you have a point of information?
I do. Thank you. It is that we are now working more in partnership with someone from Citizen to deal with these things. So from Sarah Elliott's team is that there has been an improvement, that when we know, especially when you see that the bins in the sort of little area that they have those concentrated areas for bin, and they're overflowing and so on. We are sort of finding that, you know, by working in partnership with them, a dedicated person working with our team, that there has been improvements. It's not perfect, but it is making a difference, and it's a lot better than it was. And it's just to share that with Scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heatherton. Councillor Akhtar, I don't see any more question hands, I don't think, Jenny. So,
Councillor McNicholas has put his hand up and put it back down again. So
well,
hopefully
Chair,
that was
just I'd like to put an additional recommendation when appropriate.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Akhtar, would you have any? Sorry.
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm not going to repeat what my colleague said, but I want to pick up what Councillor John Mutton said and what Councillor John McNicholas and also Councillor Tay, what Robert said. When it comes to fines and courts, let me make it very clear: the fixed penalty notices are good, but but every single conviction for more serious fly tipping offences still results in council taxpayer having to pick up the bill, because these fines are paid in courts and it takes a very long time to get the money back. So that's where the government can come in and they can help us to speed up to tackle this scourge of fly tipping. That's one point. Another point is government can also help us with manufacturers. When they sell the new furniture, new mattresses, new settees, they can take the old furniture away from people. And I want to say that our tip is free. People can go and make appointment, as other colleagues said. But Madam Chairman, I want to say this. I slightly disagree with officers, although it's my report. In Folsall, I live here for the last 50 years. Not only the residents are to blame, but also people from outside. They get the rubbish collectors from other wards and they dump it here. Please just don't blame the Folsall residents. The officers need to look into this. I have an experience. I have challenged people. And I say to you once again, it's not only the Folsall residents, it's people collecting rubbish from other places and coming and dumping it in Folsall. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, Councillor Akhtar, and I do think that happens in every ward. Jenny, do we take recommendations at this point?
Yes, if there are no more questions.
Thank you very much. So, have you noted any recommendations as we've gone through?
I haven't noted any additional recommendations, but I know that Councillor McNicholas wanted to suggest one. We have got a couple of actions, which are to share the waste tonnage with members, and also to circulate the 30 hot streets with members as well outside of the meeting.
Thank you very much. And John, have you got your recommendation formed?
Well, yes, I suppose I have, but I'm grateful to Councillor Akhtar for his very clear political guidance on this matter, and I'm reassured that where appropriate we will prosecute, because like I've said earlier, it is extremely important that we are seen to be taking action. And I note Craig's comments in terms of using bespoke signage, but nevertheless, we've obviously printed these ourselves in Appendix 1. It was picked up by Councillor Heaven, and I'm just wondering if these are already printed, okay, accept that, but if there's an opportunity, I think some wording on the signage would be very helpful in Appendix 1. For example, the bottom 2 lines repeat themselves. So why not in the brackets put "we will" underlined, prosecute offenders? That gets the message across in my mind. And in his summing up, Councillor Akhtar actually raised further issues which we haven't considered, but perhaps some information is made available about the role of the LGA and government in terms of helping us with legislation going forward, because obviously what's happening in Coventry is happening elsewhere. So just some further information on this would be quite helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And apologies, ironically, the noise coming from my room is the refuse collectors outside. So Jenny, will you be able to put that in a form of words for us for the end of the meeting?
I'm sure that I can work on that whilst we're going through. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So then moving on, and we do have a change in the agenda. So if I'm right, coming next, we have the Highway Maintenance Capital Funding with Councillor Heatherton.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies. I dropped something earlier, woke the little dog up, and obviously set her off. So
Chair,
to explain
if I may, sorry to interrupt you, Patricia, but there were some recommendations before us that either I fell asleep or we didn't take and agree.
No, we absolutely didn't, John. You're right. Sorry, Patricia. Can we go back to that point, please, Jenny?
Yep, sorry. The recommendations in the report are to note the actions and the programmes in place to deliver the project, request that a further report is brought back to the board in October 2021, and then any other recommendations, one of which has been identified about referencing enforcement on the signage.
Thank you very much. So are we happy with those recommendations?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you, John, for the reminder. So back to you then, Councillor Heatherton. Thank you for your patience.
Sorry, Chair. Just want to confirm: are we not wanting to review the tipping process booking at all? I just want to get confirmation. Are we saying that the tipping process review will not be looked into at all?
I thought that Councillor Heatherton outlined that was there. Is that correct?
I just want to get confirmation. Are we saying that the current system is working perfect and there's no review going to be taking place?
I don't think that's what was said.
Chair, could it be put as an item for the new committee? I mean, it may be relevant for them to consider when they develop the programme for the year.
We can come back, Chair, and let you know, because obviously this was a pilot. This was while we were in the height of COVID. It has worked exceptionally well. We compare ourselves to our neighbours, and certainly we looked at the problems they were having. It has been the reviews we have on this is how successful it's been and how much people prefer it. It's done so orderly, as I think Councillor Mitchell will find out this afternoon, and others that have used it. It has been so orderly. There is no reason on earth why people can't pick up a phone and actually make a booking. It's no different to, we're not going to have people turning up. There's a lot of works going on London Road and about the Charterhouse and so on, and a lot of works where we're down to one lane right now, and it would be foolish to change it. But in terms of, going back to, thank you, John, going back to sort of allowing on a day, the confusion that has caused and the way that we are managing it now, I don't think there is any likelihood of that. But obviously we monitor it. It's an ongoing thing. We monitor it, and should we need to review it, we will.
Thank you. Are you happy with that, Councillor Heaven?
Yes, I just know what to say when people do complain to me. Then that's why I need to get clear on that. That right now it feels that it's working fine, and there's not going to be any review. Because
I really don't think that those words were what was said. I really do think that Councillor Heatherton says that it is consistently monitored.
I did.
It is consistently so, because what my recommendation was maybe to look into it, to review make it more, if there was a way to make it more simpler for people.
What's more simpler than picking up a phone? I'm sorry, Councillor Heaven. I really think that these days we either pick up the phone or we go online. We don't turn up.
I think at this point I'll come in and say that I think Councillor McNicholas's suggestion was absolutely spot on. This is being monitored at the moment. Should it be necessary for a review, I'm sure that can be looked at in later meetings.
Okay, that's excellent, Chair. Thank you so much. That's all I needed to hear.
Thank you very much. Councillor Heatherton, would you like to come back in?
I would. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I know this is obviously a controversial sort of subject. Our roads and pavements affect us all, affect us greatly, and the last couple of winters, in particular, the winter before last was the wettest on record, and this one just gone has been equally as bad. Hasn't broken the records, but it's been absolutely bad. The effects that has on our roads, our surfaces and our pavements and so on is huge, but mainly our roads. So I just want to put that in context, because actually I sit on the regional flood board. I also sit on the local flood committee and so on. And actually what I hear from around the region, around the country actually, and the examples of where, we've been so badly affected by these very wet winters. And I think Neil Cowper is here, and he will also go into the effects of not just having wet winters, but also when it freezes, when you've got the water standing and then it freezes, and the impact that has as well. So we're left now with the damage of, these winters and so on. And, I go around the street, I'm out and about again now, and I just see the toll it's taken. So it's just to say we are so very aware. Neil will go into details that we've got 2 extra teams now working with us. And in actual fact, he's bringing another extra team as well to deal with some of these things. But it is a programme of rectifying the damage and maintaining the city roads with continued investment in preventative, proactive maintenance. There are proposals, I note that what you say about the pavements as well. So the proposals to also provide a programme of footway improvements funded from the Right to Buy receipts of £1 million from Citizen Housing Group Investment Fund, that will be delivered over the next financial year. This year, 400k is being made available from the capital programme to provide resilience to the pothole and patching service to ensure the city roads and pavements are maintained to a safe standard. I have agreed with Neil Camper, as I say, about the extra teams. At all times we have to sort of try and deal with these on a priority basis, and I know that is the most difficult thing for all of us, to actually take on board, because we all think that what we see is a priority, except that, you know, across the city there are other priorities. So I'm going to ask Neil to come in on this now. I am going to have to give my apologies, and I'm going to hand over to Deputy Gavin Lloyd in my absence. I do need to be at a meeting of the DEEP to talk about disability in our city. So thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to put this forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heatherton. And Neil, I think you've got a pictorial.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Councillor Heatherton was speaking of the wider capital programme, and I'm quite happy to pick up on that if there's any further questions. The briefing note that I sent round was specifically about extra funding that we got in the middle of 2020, which was welcome funding, which followed further bids to central government. They do like to challenge authorities to make bids, but we've got a good team, and we were able to secure another 2 million, which we took forward in the supplementary report that's included in the appendices. We took that in last August and added another £2 million to last year's capital programme. That was specifically, as it says in my report, about aiming for areas on bus routes, and we in the city also aligned it to some previous work that we'd done in terms of identifying some of the pavements in the city that were used by our most vulnerable residents. So we aligned that with the bus route thinking from the West Midlands Combined Authority, and identified a number of sites that's also included in the appendices.
Thank you.
Most of those sites are now completed. I can say, if people have got the lists in front of them, we've also completed Exminster Road, Langbank Avenue and St James's Lane since I circulated that particular appendices. So we are making really good progress with those schemes. I'll just, I've got some before, I think pictures often speak louder than words. So I've got some, they were circulated, but I've got some slightly different ones.
Thank you.
If Chair, if you're happy for me to share those now.
Please. Yes, thank you, Neil.
Okay, let's see if the technology works.
Neil, if you just move the presentation on, I've already inserted your slides into the one that we're showing. Not to worry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, that's fine, don't worry.
Right, I think I know what I'm doing, so I'll stick with this one, if that's okay.
Stick with what you're doing, that's fine.
Is that okay? Can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so Longfellow Road, as we can see there, significant improvement. Got rid of all the paving and improved the verges with a breed and gravel type finish. Brand new edgings along here. Really good improvement there. Similar at Mantilla Drive. I don't think that's exactly the same location, but you can get the feel for that, and new carriageway as well. This is a good one because that is exactly the same location. Quan Way, you can see the condition of that paving. And now we've got a nice level tarmac surface, and finally another one at Belgrave Road. Again, replacement with tarmac. So very short presentation, but gives you a feel for the big improvement at these locations. So stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Neil. And
that's really the end of my
presentation. Thank you very much, Neil.
You're happy to take, sorry.
You're happy to take
happy to take questions.
At this point. Thank you. Do you have any questions for Neil? I think I see Councillor
Bailey. Yeah, Councillor Bailey's indicated.
Okay, thank you, Chair, but it's a very short one. I just want to say thank you, because it does make a big difference, and we've already seen it in my ward. I'm sure we have in other wards as well. So I just wanted to say thank you for this. That's it.
Thank you very much, Roger.
Thank you, Councillor.
Are there any more questions? No? Thank you very much. So should we look at the recommendations then, which are to note the progress on delivering the Challenge Fund programme and identify any recommendations for the Cabinet member? Does anyone have any recommendations? No. Would you like to round this off then, Councillor Lloyd? This item?
Oh, thank you, Chair. To be completely frank, I mean, Patricia covered the main capital programme. Neil's covered everything to do with everything from the most vulnerable resident routes all the way through to the bus lane sections being hit. And then obviously Roger capped it off with that very excellent, good work, Neil. Pass it on to the teams, etc. And I think everything that needs to be said on it probably has. The only thing that I would like to quickly add, if I may, Chair, is my personal thanks to Neil and all of the gangs, etc., the new ones that are coming in that have covered and helped us get through the pandemic and pick up all those extra shifts. And they really have gone above and beyond. So, Neil, if you could just pass on my thanks as well as Councillor Heverton's to the team, it would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you.
And from all of us, I think, Neil. Thank you very much.
It's much appreciated. I'll pass that on, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we accept the recommendations as printed with no further?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Agreed. Yep.
Thank you. Moving on then to the item regarding the draft statement of community involvement, and apologies, Councillor Welsh, that the item had to be moved around on the agenda. Would you like to start us off on this item, please?
Yeah, no problem at all. I understand the pressure that everybody's under, so that's absolutely fine. And my apologies for doubting your excellent chairing skills, because you managed to whip them back into shape on the second item and get through it. So great work on that one. So with the statement of community involvement, I think I'm going to try and keep my comments short because I want to hear from members on this one. So the last time that it was updated was in 2012, and there's been significant changes in planning guidance and legislation since then. Times have moved on as well, so we're looking at quite a significantly different document, but we've had to do that to bring it up to date. We felt it's right that we consult on it. I think it would have been a joke if we'd just took this through without actually asking people's opinions. So as a council, we do take consultation seriously. So we are going through a 6-week consultation period. I'll be interested in, of course, I'll consider the views of the Scrutiny Board along with the consultation responses in the final draft. You may want to have it come back in the new municipal year. I'm quite happy to do that as well. I wanted a document, and the point of this for me was I wanted a document where people could pick it up and understand what it is that's going to happen in terms of planning, consulting with residents, and how residents let people know about planning. I'm not critical of the previous document, but it was something like 60 pages long and contained an awful lot of information which is useful. But in terms of actually getting to the point and understanding about how planning works, I think we're closer to that with the document we have now. You'll see that it's split into 2 major sections, so planning policy and development management. So planning policy will be will cover things like the local plan and SPDs, and planning development is the planning function that most people are aware of in terms of applications coming forward. I suppose just wanted to pick out a few things that I think have been really positive that we've done since I've become cabinet member, working with different organisations. So I wanted to raise with particular attention to parish councils. I have met with Kersley Parish Council now, and I've made the offer to Allesley Parish Council, although they've not actually took me up on the offer yet. But I do want to make sure that we have a good working relationships with parish councils. And I'll say with Kersley, I think some of the work that we've done around their request for community space, they're looking for somewhere that the parish council can meet. Within the developments that are going on, we are working with them to see if we can actually achieve that. So I think there's some really good work that's going on already. And I don't mean to not mention Finham Parish Council. I also need to meet with them too. So just to make sure I haven't forgotten about them. The report also touches on resilience, and I think that's particularly important now with the times we're living in with COVID. That section is there just to make sure that we are ready to do things in different ways and to be able to adapt to different situations. Again, I thank officers for the efforts they've made during COVID. I think planning has, I mean, it's is it perfect? I suspect people probably struggle with the amount of documentation they get, but actually I think going online, doing it fully online, I think members of the committee and officers have done an amazing job there. Just a few of the things I want to just mention. It draws attention to online communication with people. I want to make sure that doesn't diminish the importance of being able to contact people in other ways. So people will still need paper copies of documents and everything, and we have tried to accommodate that as well. So I mean, I think that's important. There's also, in terms of when we consult and make things available, the use of council buildings such as public libraries and everything as well, that is still in there. I think other work, just to draw to the committee's attention, that we are working on, and I think it is important in terms of how we communicate with people. Members may be aware the planning portal will be not just updated, we'll be getting a new contract for the planning portal. I think there is great opportunities there to improve communications with people, make it easier to access applications, make it easier to respond to things too. So I think there's a good piece of work that is separate to this, but linked as well. I also, and I've not told officers this yet, but I do want us to have a look at guidance we give people on engaging in planning process, and particularly speaking at planning committee. I think there is some pages on the website currently that go through that, but I'm aware that it can be very daunting for people that aren't used to planning committee taking part in that process. So I do want to have a look at that, try and refresh it, and make sure that people have got easy to understand guidance for engaging in the process. I think the final point I just wanted to make was that government are moving in the other direction on this. Current planning, so through planning for the future, they're looking, I believe, David, you may need to correct me if I've got the wrong consultation one there, but they're looking at taking consultation away for local applications and everything. So of course that's of concern to me, but it does matter to the local authority. So we are looking to adopt this new policy. I welcome any comments people make, and I hope it's a useful discussion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Welsh. Do you have any officer support that can add anything, or who will take the questions for you?
We've got David Butler and we've got Claire Eggington as well, both quite new to the planning team. So I don't know if they've been to Scrutiny Board yet, actually. Did you want to introduce yourselves?
Thanks, Councillor Welsh. Yeah, my name is David Butler, if I haven't met you. Hello, I'm the Head of Planning Policy and Environment, been with the city since September last year.
Hello
there. And I'm Claire Eggington, and I manage the planning policy team, and I joined Coventry at the start of January this year.
Thank you very much. And do you have anything to add to Councillor Welsh's presentation, or would you like to move straight to questions?
I think Councillor Welsh has covered it very well, and yeah. From our point of view, we're in a live consultation, so the benefit for us is really to hear members' views and to take those on board now. So happy to devote all the time we've got left to that.
Thank you very much. And I think, Jenny, I see Councillor McNicholas first.
That's right. It's Councillor McNicholas that's got his hand up.
Thank you. John, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. Delighted to see this document, and thank you very much, Councillor Welsh, for your very positive lead on this matter, because it's been a long time coming, hasn't it? And quite clearly, the need to take the statement forward from what it was originally to something that takes communications it's got to be a much better thing. But my question, though, is how we involve local communities in using this. David, you've given some indication about improving the planning portal to improve engagement. Fully support that, but it's an awareness process, isn't it, that needs to be understood. I must confess, until I read this paper, because I sit on Scrutiny 4, I wasn't aware that there was a consultation process. I mean, I'm not going to go on the planning portal unless I really need to. One of the things we have done in the past on such important documents is had a presentation to members on what this actually means, because we as members get concerns raised by our constituents, requests for help and advice, and clearly that's what this is intended to be. So I really would like some awareness of how we can better communicate. And I want to also give some comment on the development and such with the local plans, and realize that there will be a significant resource involved in officer time to work with local community residence groups who will have their localities of concern and issues that they are fully aware of. So it's that sort of an involvement that I'd like further clarity. So involvement of local communities, a presentation to members, really welcome the planning portal improvements, and full support to the document itself. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Would you like to make comment on those issues?
I'll be guided by you. I'm happy to take people individually if that's what you like.
Thank you.
I mean, I'll David or Claire, maybe I'll get you to just talk about the resourcing for the local plan refresh, if you don't mind. In terms of consultation, I think one of the things that's really, really important is that, I mean, it is a really, really difficult one. I mean, I have thought about this quite a lot, and what I've tried to do since become cabinet member is try and we got this to a degree already, but actually get people talking about planning. So within the council, we talk about planning more now. I think communities are more aware about what's going on. I'm not just talking about big applications, but actually I do think that we get good engagement with residents around planning. I mean, I know of a few developments that people have got together, and usually it may be because of concerns that they bring stuff to the council. But I think part of that as well is developers. Now, I don't want to pick out I'm being very careful not to pick out particular developments, but you can see the difference where developers actually engage with community at an early stage, and I think that's really, really important too. So that's the way I'm trying to push it towards, where we get early engagement with communities through developers, that we publicise things and we get things in the media. We make sure that we make planning through the portal as accessible as possible. We make sure that people have more notification in terms of things going to committee now as well. So I think we're moving in the right direction. Can it improve more? Yes, I do think it can. And that's why I mentioned improvements around what we have in terms of online accessibility as well. As we improve the planning portal, people will be able to access things easier, and I think that'll certainly help. It's not just about accessing applications; it's about understanding the process too. So I hope that kind of answers your question, John. And if you've got anything else on that, then please do let me know. I think the Let's Talk consultation pages for on the other side, because if you look at that planning policy and development management, for the planning policy side, we get a lot more engagement on that now. I mean, I don't know, David, if you've got any figures for how many people have took part in this consultation so far, but we are seeing more people engage in planning, in consultation than previously. And John, yes, I was coming on to your member seminar. I'm happy to organise something if you think that's appropriate. I'm happy to take that as a recommendation, and I'm more than willing to make sure members are briefed on that. David or Claire, did you have anything on local plan consultation?
Yes. Oh, sorry, David.
I was going to say, yes, Claire's got the figures.
Very keen, you see.
Over to you, Claire.
Yeah, I was just going to follow on in terms of local plan, because obviously that's a little different to the sort of way that we have to consult in terms of planning applications.
Yeah.
And obviously when you start out in a local plan process, you're after a wide range of ideas and suggestions. And one of the things through this consultation that we're currently doing at the moment is looking for people to put forward how they would like to be engaged in the process. So lots of different ideas. I mean, traditionally what we tend to see is things like exhibitions, drop-in sessions, workshops, etc., maybe particular focus groups. There's lots of different ways that you can engage in person, and we would want to know what would suit people in their communities. So there's those sort of things which I think have been always the sort of more traditional ways of engaging a local planning process. But there's a lot of technology advances now and that's been accelerated through the current pandemic, because we've had to innovate, we've had to keep the business moving while we're sort of taking a local plan forward. And there are different things that other local authorities are doing as well. So they're doing things like there's a lot of stuff on webinars where people can drop in and out. There are apps being developed so people can give their feedback via an app on what they would like to see in an area. You can even have a virtual drop-in exhibition. I've attended some recent training that was undertaken by Aberdeenshire Council, believe it or not, because they've got very remote communities, but they've actually had some huge success there in having these sort of virtual exhibition rooms that you can log into and go around as if you were there in person. And what they've seen is that actually attracts a much wider demographic as well, very different participants. So our priority really would be to make sure that everybody who wants to have a say is able to do so in a way that suits them, and that it doesn't just reflect perhaps the views of people who shout loudest, because everybody will have different views, different opinions and different things that they want to see that plan achieve. And so that's got to lie at the heart of what we do when we take forward a new local plan. So that's absolutely vitally important. And this consultation is looking for ideas and suggestions and how we keep on top of things as things keep innovating and changing as well. And the document is designed to allow that flexibility so we can respond to change and adapt accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. You've got a follow-up question, John. I see your hands raised.
Yes, I have, yeah. And I'm very grateful to Claire because not aware of what's happening Aberdeen. Could you send a link so we can look at that? Because I think what you're indicating could be used in other areas. It sounds quite innovative, yeah. And we should take it forward and use members as a trial for a webinar, because it would seem to me that's exactly what I'm calling for in terms of a presentation. Let's have it as a webinar. We can go in at our own time, look at it, make detailed comment and so on. And I think actually accepting that we are in the 21st century, we need to use 21st century techniques. Thank you very much. Sounds exciting.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much, John. Councillor Heaven.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Welsh. I think I just want to echo Councillor McNicholson, because for me, I still would like to have a presentation and understand the process of it. But I think it sounds from what Councillor Welsh is saying is a positive change, and having to review the way how things have been doing. So I really welcome that and I appreciate that. So to have a better understanding of how it works and the process would be really, really useful. And can I ask, is this new way, does that mean that residents' voices are heard more than before? And if they've got objections, would the number of residents' objections will be more take part into the officer's recommendation than in the past? Is that something that is considered?
Thank you, Councillor Heaven. Councillor Welsh?
Yeah, I may need a little bit of help from officers here, but I mean, in terms of, I think you may have been touching on more what planning considerations are and what weight is given to particular views and everything. I mean, I'm trying to make sure that what we do is, because this document has had to be updated. If you compare the two documents, the previous statement of community involvement was a very lengthy document, included an awful lot around different groups and everything, groups that no longer exist, for example. The new way forward is we'll have, and David, you may need to, like I say, help me on this. There is groups that will consult on the policy side and development management side, but the list will be able to be updated because they're not actually written into this document. And I think that's really, really important, because we need to be able to have a statement of community involvement that kind of moves with the times. Government positions on this has changed as well. So the way we do things, the way planning works has changed. When it comes to committee, I want to make sure we get as many views as we can. And I know, you know, Councillor Ridley has criticised me in the media saying we don't listen or anything. Well, actually, we do listen. We do make additional recommendations. We may not reach the conclusion that he wants to, but we have to do it within the framework the government set out. And that's the challenge we always come up against with planning, that we're within a very rigid framework that we have to work to, and it's set by the government. So, you know, I don't want to make this a really sort of political discussion. But my main commitment here is that we do get as much involvement as we can in different ways. We do understand that not everybody can do everything on computers as well. So, you know, it's a fine line, it's a balance. But I wanted to do that and make sure it's a document people can pick up and understand as well. So, officers, I don't know if you've got any more to add to that.
Yeah, just really to reiterate that point, that when the public are responding, it's a sort of matter of statutory weight. So you couldn't vary how much you take into account people's views, if you like. They either make relevant planning points or they don't, and they're taken into account as they should be now. This document is really trying to encourage as many people as possible to engage with the process of both policy that sets those overarching kind of allocations in the local plan. Really, really important people get involved with that, and then also to get really involved with planning applications as and when they come forward. So it's really just trying to open it up to as many people as possible. But certainly once those views are made to a planning application, they have to be treated in a certain way, which is as they are now and as they would be in the future.
So
thank you very much. Does that satisfy Councillor Heaven, or do you have anything further?
So no, thank you. So is it possible maybe offline we can have either members who wish to distinguish the difference between how it is now, so we're able to better communicate with residents? And you mentioned about early engagement. So any changes that we're moving forward, it would be very good to have it so that we can actually convey that and you know, mention to the residents that there is more engagement, even early stages, while developers are having conversations. So that would be a process. And just to clarify, just so from my own understanding, David, did you say it doesn't matter if you got, you know, numbers of hundreds of objections when it comes to presenting in the planning? Did you mention it would be just considered same as if you wouldn't have any objections? Because this, no, as in you will go into the consideration of why the law of the planning policy is, regardless. In addition to the objections, do you know?
It's a little bit more nuanced than that. So you have obviously people can write and object on any ground that they wish. Some are objections that are relevant in terms of planning, called material considerations, and some aren't. So you might not like the applicant, and that might be why you object, but that's not relevant to us. What we're interested in is what the application is. Obviously, if there's a huge overwhelming volume of objections, that's something that does get considered. But that doesn't make it necessarily the overwhelming kind of priority for that application. So every application is judged on its own merits, and that's really important. And we'd want people to communicate to us in as many different ways as they can to let us know what they think about something. Not always will those be relevant for the application, but I think it's probably better for us to say everybody get in touch with their concerns and we can filter it, rather than saying, making it difficult to respond to planning applications or planning consultations, because as Claire said, in the efforts, we need to really kind of reach out to as many people as we can and make sure it's not just, that all sections of the community are responding as well, rather than simply those that are engaged already.
Thank you so much. Really embrace what you're doing. Thank you so much, Councillor Ralphs too.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heaven. If there are no more questions, I've got two of my own. I think I've seen a hand going up. Councillor McNicholas.
Yes, John McNicholas.
Thank you, Councillor McNicholas.
Yeah. I'm rereading. Beg your pardon. I'm rereading the document, and I'm looking at Regulation 18, Regulation 19, and understanding the point that Councillor Welsh is making about government intention to take away the opportunity to consult with local communities, because once the local plan is established, that will be it in terms of local community involvement. They'd have had their say on how a local plan is developed, and understanding the points being raised about applications coming forward, and we will do the best that we can. It is this point about involvement of local communities in the development of a local plan. So I'm just mindful of the points being raised and how we, Coventry, intend to support local residents groups, associations, individuals contribute to the development, and this awareness that actually once the plan is established, that's it, in my mind, until that plan is reviewed. Am I correct?
Thank you.
So,
David, is your hand raised to answer that, or would you like to come in first, Councillor
I mean,
Welsh?
I'll do it first, and David will probably have to back me up with a little bit more of the technical stuff. I mean, what the government are consulting on will result in. So, and David, you do have no fear in correcting me if I get this wrong, but the way that the government foresee local plans going forward working is that a lot of the work will be front loaded. So local authorities will be expected to put an awful lot of the work that goes in currently in the, I forget which stage of the application it's done, David, but you can help me with that. So all the detail that goes into development will be expected to be put into a local plan. We'll have to do that within, and this is from my memory, David, I think it's within so many weeks. I think it's 30 weeks. There's something like, David can fill in that detail. So we have to do an awful lot more work. And David's laughing his head off there, listening to me. Do an awful lot of work at the beginning, and then we'll reach the stage where developers almost get like they can develop on certain bits of land without, it's very light touch, and there won't be very much consultation involved in it. So of course we made those representations within our responses at full council. We made our opposition known on that, and to be fair to the opposition, they did the same too, but it is of course of concern with that, and we've had the announcement recently that housing numbers will be increased as well. So when we looked at whether we review the local plan or not, I did put a recommendation in, and I listened to the petitions that were presented. I put recommendations in that I would consider reviewing the local plan if the numbers went down, but instead what's happened is the numbers have been doubled. So we won't be reviewing the local plan until December 2022 now, unless something else changes. Now, David, can you fill in the detail for me on it?
I can.
I cannot remember it all.
I think it's really important to remember as well that this is a statement of community involvement for the planning system right now. So if something changes in the future, and there's been a government consultation, if and when something changes, we would need to, they are proposing a radical overhaul of the planning system. So we would naturally need to reassess our SCI, and we would probably need to make substantial changes to it. So what the government proposed in the white paper was, like I say, an overhaul of the planning system, which, as I think, front loads that system so that you allocate and zone land in your local plan, and thereafter things that come forward in conformity with the local plan are effectively just given planning permission, and we miss out a stage of public interaction, which happens now, particularly around the outline planning application stage. So those big planning applications we've had in planning committee recently for Easton Green and Kersley, they simply wouldn't happen. There would be no need for them. And you just go straight to the really detailed matters. So we're, as planning policy boffins, if you like, are always really keen for people to get involved with the local plan. It's the stage that sets everything else out. It isn't necessarily the most immediate for people because they can't see a planning application next to their dwelling, but it's really, really important. So we encourage people to get involved, but it becomes more and more critical if this new system comes in play. So we don't know what's going to happen. We await the kind of feedback from the government consultations. But like I say, if there is a radical overhaul along those lines, it's all bets are off and we need to start again. We would be given 30 months to create that new local plan from scratch. So from a blank page to an adopted document, which is a timeline that usually local plans take around 5 to 7 years. So, real huge pressure to do a lot very, very quickly. But we will do what we do, and I'm sure we'll be fine. But engagement with local communities is essential now, becomes even more essential in that situation. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
I wasn't too far off then.
No, that's good.
30 weeks, 30 months is what I was supposed to
say. I think 30 weeks might be the deadline you set.
30 months in my head.
Thank you. John, are you happy with that?
I am. I did ask for a members seminar. I think that's even more important now, because I was quite willing to go down the path of the virtual. However, I think a lot of these things will come out, and this reminder of the importance of involving local communities. You said front-loaded, David. I think intentionally, unintentionally, I'm sorry to be political, I think this is taking deliberate attempt to take local communities out of concerns that they will raise in their local area with applications that come forward. They won't know what they are at this stage, obviously, but they will be aware that there is land in their areas that will be used by developers, and this will become a charter for developers if we're not careful. So I'm certainly going to put in a recommendation that we have a members seminar to be aware of these matters. And again, Cabinet Member, if necessary, we take it back to full council, because this is a reverse of democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I have 2 questions of my own, please, Councillor Welsh, that won't surprise you. The first one, is it ever possible for a neighbourhood plan to be cross-authority boundary? And my second question is around when people do put in an objection or a comment to a plan. I understand a response is not automatic, and people have said to me that they're concerned to know that at least their email has been received at the council house, not what action will be taken on it, but that it's been received and has been in good time for a consultation or an objection. Is there a possibility with the new system to at least enable that confirmatory email to go out, something like your email has been received, something like that? Thank you, Councillor Welsh.
Yeah, again, David, you may want to just comment on these. I think we did discuss the first point you make, and I forget what the cross boundary. David, if you could go into the detail around that. I know that we do work cross boundary. I think it'd be useful for members to understand a little bit about that, because obviously, Linda's raised it particularly around Longford, but there'll be other areas around the city where we have the same sort of situations where communities are right against the city boundaries don't matter. You cross over into Warwickshire and you wouldn't necessarily know. And then the other thing about responses, I have discussed this with officers. I think one of the difficulties is the amount of different ways that people respond to applications. So if people respond on the portal, if people respond by email, if they send it to different officers within the council. So to try and get a consistent, yes, you will definitely get a response is a difficult one, but particularly with us updating the planning portal, if we're able to get most of our responses through that, there will be a way of acknowledging that people have responded to that. With email and stuff, it's far more difficult because it could go to anybody. People could be on holiday. There's a whole host of things that make it difficult to make sure people get individual responses in that regard. But David, did you want to pick up on those 2 points as well?
Yeah, so particularly with cross-boundary working, we obviously work particularly with our Warwickshire neighbours as a sub-region, Coventry and Warwickshire, very, very closely. We have a duty to do so, but also we do that very willingly as well. In terms of neighbourhood plans are obviously are usually set around either parish or town council boundaries, but that's not exclusive. You can have neighbourhood forums. Indeed, we have a neighbourhood plan based on a neighbourhood forum area that was recognised. So it's perfectly possible for a neighbourhood that has developed in a sort of cross-boundary position to develop a neighbourhood plan. So there's no regulations that prevent that. But obviously the area needs to have a union. It needs to be a contiguous whole. It needs to make sense that it is a space that comes forward as a single area. So absolutely no preclusion to do that. If it straddles boundaries, administrative boundaries, then it would be that a neighbourhood forum area needs to be created and recognised. But that is an administrative process that can be done. But obviously we need to have people on the ground willing that forward. So it's certainly something that could be looked at if there's an area that feels that it's appropriate to do so.
Thank you.
With regard, yes, and I think Councillor Swalsh has picked up the difficulties there are in having a set response, particularly where potentially you could have hundreds and hundreds of emails in on any individual application when they're coming in various different ways.
Thank you very much. Councillor Heaven, is that your hand raised?
Apologies, Chair. Yes, it is. I just want to get clarification. If not in this meeting, you can send it in future meetings. Councillor Welsh, you mentioned about if the local plan get reviewed, the numbers of housing for Coventry will increase. I get that point. I just want to know how we arrived with that before doing the ONS review of ONS figures. And if you have that facts, if you could share it with us, that what numbers of increase of currently housing that we are developing, the ones that is passed through planning or have got outline plannings, and on addition to what is already being passed, what would be the increased numbers that you've come up with that you just stated in this, because it would be really interesting for me to know, and how we can arrive in this figure without doing the ONS numbers.
Thank you, Councillor Heaven. Councillor Welsh, I'm realising that the question really doesn't form part of what we're here to do today. I don't know whether you're happy to answer that or will respond in writing.
More than happy to answer it.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Heaven, you'll know that we took some consultations through council last year. The government did a U-turn on housing numbers, and and I paraphrase here, but they said that Greenbelt in the south was more important than Greenbelt in the Midlands, and they reallocated the housing numbers from the south to the Midlands and the north. That gave an uplift, and I forget what uplift. I mean, David, you have to fill in the gaps here, but there was an uplift in numbers that we have to accommodate within the city. I think it was a 35%.
35, yeah.
35% uplift in the numbers that we have to allocate within the city. So it's not even like we can do that through dispersing it into Warwickshire and everywhere else. It would have to be accommodated in the city. The government, although there is the UK statistics review of ONS figures, the government, and I've said this a number of times, the government have to change the way they do things, and all they do at the moment is you'll be aware because you're a Conservative Party candidate. They had a commitment within the manifesto to build 300 and 310,000 houses a year. To meet that target, they'd have to increase people's numbers within their local plans. So that is what they've done. They've increased the numbers, and that's going forward is what we're going to. So it's very, very complicated because the standard methodology. There's the new targets we'll have to meet as well. But David will fill in the gaps here in terms of the numbers. But we reach, I believe, it's about 2,300 houses a year that we would have to build within the city. I just want to bear in mind though that our actual housing need is 46,000, 42,000. Within the city, it's 24,000. So it is very, very complicated. But the bottom line is we end up with more houses that we have to build, and that is why I'm not reviewing the local plan until 2022.
If I could just come in, that's okay. Like Councillor Welsh says, there's a set way that we have to calculate our housing numbers. That's called the standard methodology. It's set in in the national legislation, and that specifically uses the 2014 ONS population projections. So unless it's so no modifications, not the latest numbers, those specific ones, and that was after a consultation last year where it proposed using the more recent ones, which would have actually led to even higher housing numbers for us. But it's set very, very specific date for them. So although there is this UK Statistics Authority review on how the ONS produce their population projections, whatever comes out of that, unless the standard methodology changes, and I say it's very specific currently, unless that changes, it can have no impact. So we know with a reasonable degree of certainty precisely what our housing number would be. And as Councillor Welsh says, it is the population projections multiplied by an affordability modifier. And then as one of the largest cities in the UK, we have an additional 35% uplift on our housing numbers that must be accommodated within the city boundaries. So we know with, say, reasonable certainty precisely what it is until at which point this government chooses to change the standard methodology, which may happen in the future. We don't know. And as and when those numbers change, our housing needs change. But we're very confident we could tell you what it is right now because, say, the legislation is very clear on how to calculate it.
Thank you very much. As Chair, I just didn't want to go. The reason I raised this question is only because Councillor Welsh had raised it, and I don't think it's for this scrutiny meeting, but I would like to maybe outside of this to discuss and have a better understanding, because obviously that was for ONS number in 2014, and with the increase of both university expansion, that has had an impact on the ONS number with 50,000 students. So that is an area that it's never been looked at, because within that period there was a 30% increase in universities with the students coming into the city. That gave a false figure.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heaven. Yes, I think what you're saying is that you would like some private information detailed about how the housing needs are measured, and as you said, you didn't think it was for this meeting.
That's right.
And indeed it's not. So hopefully, Councillor Welsh, you will ask officers to detail how those housing numbers are achieved for Councillor Heaven.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy for. I mean, Councillor Heaven can meet with officers if that is the best way of doing it. I'm sure David or Rob would be happy to do that. I really want to increase the understanding on the Conservative Party side, because at the minute they don't understand, and what they're saying to people in public is just not right. But that's for another time.
Thank you very much. I see no.
6th of May would be a good time.
I see no more questions, but do we have a recommendation, do we, Jenny?
It looks as if there's a recommendation to do an all members seminar, possibly a webinar around the statement of community involvement. Would that, I wasn't quite sure whether that would form part of the consultation process or whether that was to inform members once the final statement of community involvement had been agreed.
Could I clarify, Chair?
Yes,
if I may. I feel we as a council should input into the consultation, particularly because of the national implications, the challenge to local communities. We need an awareness for ourselves and also the city as to what is actually happening. Can I also welcome the planning portal improvements? I think that's absolutely essential. And I don't know what impact that would have in terms having a presentation to members. I don't know what impact that would have in terms of the consultation. Would it be physically possible to do? Because I seem to recall it's the end of March, isn't it? Thank you.
Just going to say, Chair, I mean, bearing in mind this statement of community involvement is being adopted with the current rules that we have. We've touched on how it may change in the future, and that may happen quite soon. But we simply can't wait for that moment. I think it's right that members get understanding about what happens in the future, but we are going to put a statement in now because it's been, it's 2012, the last one was done. So I think, John, I'm happy to, and Chair, sorry, I should say through the Chair, that I'm happy to organise a presentation to members on it. I'll need to see when we can actually do that, but I mean, like I say, I'm happy to bring this back to Scrutiny Board as well before it's adopted as well, if that is agreeable with the committee and with you, Chair.
So is everyone happy with that?
Well, certainly, Chair. I mean, sort of practicalities are here, and we simply don't have the time.
Thank you. So then, along with the recommendation, which is I think at 2.2 on page 17, I've got a form of words, Jenny, that we can add to the second recommendation now.
Okay, so I can include that members are generally supportive of the statement, the draft statement of community involvement, and also that members have requested a seminar and information in a timely manner, if that fits best, on the the statement of community involvement to all members.
So John and David, are you both happy with that?
Yep, that's fine.
Fine by me. Just the comment about the planning portal improvements. I think that's it. Absolutely vital. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So
I'll include that as well. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, just so we don't get confused, I've kind of shared a lot of ideas I have about planning as well as the statement of community involvement. I mean, what I will do is I think if members want a statement, a briefing on statement of community involvement, I'm fine to do that. We may follow up later in the year with how planning is changing, because there is a lot of changes going on. We could maybe do that as a seminar or something as well for people as well. Maybe I'd maybe suggest that, John, as a way forward.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, David. So that being the case now, is everyone happy with the recommendations?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So then moving on to item 7, Jenny, the work programme. Thank you.
Yeah, obviously this is our last meeting of this municipal year, so any of the items that are listed there will be carried forward for consideration by the new board for 21 to 22. I have picked up around possibly taking a further item on the statement of community involvement later on in the year, and also looking at the impact of the booking system on the tip on the London Road.
Thank you very much, Jenny, and thank you very much, Councillor Welsh. I understand that you've got to go now. So thank you, Jenny. Are there any comments on the work programme? No, thank you. So moving on then, item 8, I haven't had any other items of business. And so declare this meeting ended, and thank you everyone, members, cabinet members and officers, for your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you for your help and support throughout the year, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.